All right, it is a minute past the hour, so we'll get going with slide one. Also, hi there, and welcome to the US Web Design System monthly call for August of 2023. August, the month with no national holidays, but home to the Perseid meteor shower, the Earth's yearly transit through space debris, which my family and I got up at 3 a.m. to watch the other night. It's shown here with a black USWDS logo. And if you keep looking at it long enough, there'll be one little flash for a fraction of a second. Oh, there's one. And welcome back after our July break. Thanks for being back with us today. Slide two. My name is Dan Williams, he, him, and I'm the USWDS product lead. And here on screen is my avatar. Dark hair, blue sweater, collared shirt. Today, my physical self is wearing a light blue collared shirt. What you can't see is that it's hot here in the Pacific Northwest, and my off-screen wardrobe today features shorts. And I feel it's important to note that while my current heat at home is unpleasant, my heart goes out to those who are truly suffering in Hawaii. And I'd also like to note that when we introduce ourselves in these calls, you'll hear things like self-descriptions and pronouns. These help everyone share the same context and know a bit more about who we are, whether or not you know us or can see us. First, I'd like to mention that we're recording this monthly call, so please refrain from turning on your camera. We will manually turn off any cameras to ensure that the recording doesn't show us on camera. Unfortunately, while we are recording this call, we currently aren't able to always share the video publicly. That said, we are making progress on being able to share videos, and we're building the capacity to slowly release more and more of these monthly calls publicly. So stay tuned for more updates. When we do post videos publicly, they'll be available via the Digital.gov event page. I'd also like to remind you that by voluntarily attending this Digital.gov event, you agree to abide by Digital.gov's community guidelines at digital.gov/communities/community guidelines. You can leave the meeting at any time if you do not agree to abide by these guidelines. We've posted a link to the community guidelines in the chat. If you are in the Zoom app, you can use integrated live captioning by selecting the CC button on the bottom of the screen. If you prefer live captioning in a separate window, we've posted a link to the live captioning in the chat. We'll be posting other links and references into the chat as we go along, and I encourage you to ask questions in the chat at any time. If any member of our team can answer your question in the chat, we'll do so. Otherwise, there'll be some time for questions and answers at the end of the hour. Also, be sure to introduce yourself in the chat as well. It's nice to know who's here. It's good to have you here today. For those of you who find the chat distracting, you're welcome to close or hide the chat window during the main presentation. You can reopen it later during the Q&A session at the end of this call. So thanks. And with that, let's get started. With slide 3. So what's on our agenda for today? Well, first we'll look at a new site launch. And then I'll highlight some product updates. And then we'll spend the rest of the time checking out our roadmap for the rest of 2023 and into 2024. And we'll be leaving time for Q&A at the end, so stick around. Slide 4. So let's jump right into it with a nice site launch. Slide 5. This month, we're looking at a new site launch from NASA, gcn.nasa.gov, a new site for NASA's General Coordinates Network. Once known as the Gamma Ray Coordinates Network, GCN distributes alerts between space and ground-based observatories, physics experiments, and thousands of astronomers around the world, sharing real-time observations, discoveries, and follow-up of gamma ray bursts, gravitational wave compact binary mergers, and high-energy neutrinos. So if a star goes supernova somewhere out there, you'll hear about it on GCN. The GCN homepage features a simple black header with the NASA logo, a hero section with a diagram of relationships between observatories, experiments, and astronomers, and the words GCN, NASA's time domain and multi-messenger alert system. So congratulations to this team, and be sure to let our team know when a new site launches, either with an email or a note on the USWDS public Slack channel. On the product update side, we have a new release we're prepping right now, USWDS 3.6.0. This one has a few important bug fixes, and it builds on the work we introduced in 3.5.0 to normalize the display of disabled states. Slide 8. Here are a few key improvements in 3.6.0. We're improving in-page navigation. Users will be able to customize the element that in-page navigation pulls content from, and hidden headers will no longer appear in navigation. We're expanding icon list support for setting all of the font size tokens. We're addressing color and styling bugs related to disabled styles. We're fixing a bug that's prevented font family size utility classes from generating. And we're making accessibility improvements for memorable date, pagination, and form input components. It's a good release and some important follow-up to 3.5.0. Slide 9. And that's USWDS 3.6.0, and we should, fingers crossed, have that out for you this Friday, which is tomorrow. Slide 10. So let's get into it and talk about the USWDS roadmap. For the last year or so, we've been doing incremental roadmap planning a couple times a year. Our last planning increment started in February and just ended recently. And now it's time for us to plan for the next 4 months, as well as to look forward to the next 8 and 12 months as well. There's a lot we'd like to do, and I expect that the work we're planning now will be some of the most important we've done as a design system. More than likely, probably setting us up for a new major version in 2024. But before we talk about what we're planning, I'd like to take a moment and look at where we've been as a project and as a product. Slide 11. Today, USWDS is about 8 years old. We'll talk a bit more about this next month, since next month will mark 8 years since the first release of the design system as a public alpha release. Slide 12. Since then, the design system has been through at least 3 key phases that correspond with our major versions. Slide 13. USWDS 1.0 provided the common starting point for many new websites, particularly those built alongside 18F and USDS. In many ways, it was built to prove its value, built to prove the value of common design solutions, helping teams to build faster and better, to spin up more sites in less time. And in that way, it was certainly a success and gained a fair amount of adoption across agencies. Slide 14. By USWDS 2.0, about 4.5 years ago now, we were ready to learn from that early experience. We'd heard from designers and developers that while they got a lot of use out of the design system as a starting point, most projects were customized to a point where it was difficult sometimes to see a connection between the final product and the components and styles that shipped by default with USWDS. USWDS took that real-world customization as a starting point and developed a common design language of tokens, things like color, spacing, and font size that allowed more flexibility inside the constraints of the design system. USWDS was and is built to adapt and to allow teams to build custom experiences while still sharing common building blocks. Slide 15. We released USWDS 3.0 last April. The design system was growing, both in its user base, but also in the components it supports. By USWDS 3.0, we'd more than doubled our supported components since USWDS 2.0. The code base was growing, and the style sheet was growing as well. USWDS 3.0 brought common component packages, a modular approach to our components and code base that was built to choose, allowing teams to choose only those components their project actually uses. Slide 16. But all the time, growing. Since USWDS 2.0, around the time we started keeping reliable usage metrics, design system use has about tripled. Slide 17. In the last 4 years, sites using USWDS have grown from about 103 to 461-ish. Slide 18. And the page views per month on USWDS powered sites, as measured with the Digital Analytics Program, or DAP, has grown from 390 million to 1.1 billion. Slide 19. And as a percentage of the total page views across the federal government, as measured with DAP, what we think of as page view coverage, we've grown from 9% to nearly 30%, 28%. Slide 20. And we've done this because of a strong community of practitioners sharing solutions. And that's this group here today. Slide 21. These are dozens of teams that are doing good work across agencies and silos. Slide 22. We're iteratively improving the digital experience of government, and it shows. Not only do we see this in the site launches and redesigns we feature from month to month, but in the undeniable progress and presence of human-centered design at the forefront of decision-making across agencies and teams. Slide 23. This is principle-centered progress that we should feel good about. Slide 24. Nevertheless, we've certainly felt and are feeling growing pains in the design system as a product. As we try to make good decisions about what we can build, we are listening to your comments and criticisms. Slide 25. These are things like, you don't have what we need. Slide 26. Our standards conflict with yours. Slide 27. You need to prove your solutions are better. Slide 28. It's just too hard to use. And it's a burden to stay up to date. Slide 29. Slide 30. To be clear, these are reasonable concerns and serious concerns, and we do take them seriously. Slide 31. Without question, USWDS always needs to improve. Slide 32. USWDS always needs to evolve. Slide 33. And USWDS always needs to change. There's no end point. There's no place where the work is done. Slide 34. From sprint to sprint, we triage and address lots of issues and feature requests from you, from the public. Well, maybe not from the public, but from the community. Slide 35. There's a lot we need and want to do. And of course, it's not just what we need and want to do. You expect a tool that delivers on its promise of making it easier to build accessible, mobile-friendly government websites. The 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, for instance, expects just that, an integrated digital experience. Whatever the expectations, and however we mature, improve, and change, we expect to change. Change is inevitable. Slide 36. But change isn't just inevitable. It isn't just hard. It's costly. And what it costs to change the design system itself, our own design and development costs, is just one of the least of these costs. Realistically, the cost of change is a cost that's borne by the teams that need to change along with us. Slide 37. And currently, the more teams use the design system, the more costly the change. there is a multiplier in play here that works perversely against our promise to facilitate scaling, design, and development solutions. Slide 38. We want to scale improvements, but each improvement, each change, risks multiplying cost across the growing number of teams that use the design system. Slide 39. So, what are these costs of change? Slide 40. There are two general types of cost associated with a design system change. Slide 41. The first is perhaps the simplest to understand, implementation cost, which you can think of as the design and development time it takes to actually update to a new version and modify your project templates to reflect changes to the USWDS code base. And because of the way we distribute our code base, any change to the markup of a component necessitates a downstream change to a project implementation. Slide 42. The second type of cost is what we might call justification cost, which we can understand as the cost of understanding and agreeing with the change, justifying the change to your team and project. In a way, the idea of justification cost includes what you might traditionally think of as opportunity cost, or the cost of not pursuing your own solution in favor of ours. Slide 43. What can we do to lessen these costs? Slide 44. In general, back-end consistency enables front-end change. The impact of change and the cost of change can be lessened with consistent and thoughtful structure. Slide 45. Just as implementation costs can be helped by abstracting or automating aspects of implementation, like through a consistent and thoughtful API that constrains change to outputs while maintaining constant inputs, justification costs can be helped by abstracting or automating aspects of justification, like through consistent and thoughtful processes that pass decisions through consistent, collaborative standards of evaluation and decision-making. Slide 46. So as we build to change, we'll be focusing on these two elements as our foundation: API and process. Slide 47. And this, I think, is really the biggest change from where we started at USWDS 1. This is a fundamental change we've been very slowly moving toward from release to release, that we really need to support staying up to date over time, improving the ongoing update process so we can all grow and change and improve together. Slide 48. We see USWDS as a dependency and not as a fork. And that means that USWDS isn't just a starting point, but an ongoing relationship over time. Slide 49. To be effective in this goal, to be a dependency in good standing, we need to mature our technology. Slide 50. And we need to also mature our process. Slide 51. Because we see the design system not just as a commonality machine, but a change machine. Slide 52. Old heads will remember we talked about this idea way back in February of 2022. And we're putting a link to that presentation in the chat, where we went into a little bit more detail around thinking about an API for USWDS. Slide 53. Now we're going to get it done. Slide 54. I recently read this quote in a book by Jane Jacobs. She was a critical thinker about development. notably about effective and ineffective urban structure, how cities live and die, how interventions can be constructive or destructive. And she writes, development isn't a collection of things. It is a process that yields things. Slide 55. Evolution isn't simply an ape, a cave dweller, and a modern human standing in a row on a timeline. It's the process that drives ongoing differentiation. And I would hope that our process, however it evolves, is an outgrowth of our design principles. These principles are meant to apply just as much to USWDS as a product as anything you build with your teams. And these are the principles. I'll read them off the tattoo on my arm. Slide 58, start with real user needs. Slide 59, earn trust. Slide 60, embrace accessibility. Slide 61, promote continuity. 62, and listen. Slide 63. So I'm really happy to announce that the USWDS team is actually growing and changing. And I'd like to introduce my new teammate and colleague, Ann Petersen, our new experience design lead, to talk about our roadmap and our roadmap process. Ann, take it away.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the US Web Design System's newest full-time federal employee, our experience design lead. In the interest of inclusion and accessibility, I'm a white person with short brown hair and small brown glasses. I'm aiming for a fairly androgynous look, but that's up to your interpretation. Very glad to be part of the team and excited I can help expand the full-time federal team from 1 staff member to 2. Slide 64. Being the new person anywhere means a lot of information absorption. Thankfully, I've been part of Technology Transformation Services, we sometimes say TTS, here within the General Services Administration for about 5 years to this point. That was mostly as part of 18F, which is also within TTS. So I'm familiar with the design system from implementation and organizational perspectives. Slide 65. And from everything I've absorbed and understood so far, my top takeaway is this is a big job. The scale is immense. We support, at core, all of the different use cases of interacting with government online, and therefore all the different people that depend on government in its many forms. Supporting all kinds of teams, all across government. Huge breadth, huge needs, and incredibly important to get it right for everyone. Slide 66. You may know the quote from Carl Sagan, who said, "To make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe," which appears on this slide, along with an astronomy photo of a nebula. The US web design system right now is giving me first invent the universe kind of vibes here. We need the underlying structure and commonalities of the design system to support the government's digital universe, but it needs to be both flexible and consistent enough to support everyone's needs, from agencies and products to end users and what they need to get done. So how do we start? Slide 67, or really continue doing this big job? Our roadmap is part of that, showing how we get from where we are to where we want to be. We know our challenges are big ones, as Dan covered. Those challenges, though, are also opportunities, especially if we can use one to support the other. We'll need to make fundamental shifts, foundational, architectural, and process changes to make the future we want possible, especially without the continuous work we need to do to support with the continuous work that we need to do to support the system as a living product. This move lets us more fully satisfy what a design system is supposed to solve for its users. These are fundamental platform basics that are necessary before we can expand our view in the roadmap's kind of next iteration. Part of that is figuring out the mechanics of how we change so we can be ready for those shifts. And what we have for you today is about the next year's worth of what we're calling a roadmap, but may not quite count in the way most product managers would define it. Slide 68. Our roadmap today is what we'd call a minimum viable product, or MVP. We wanted to communicate as much as we have, as soon as we have it, to help you understand changes that are coming. So today's roadmap is fairly near term, year term, you might say. So how we got to this roadmap and the items on it leans a little bit on our old process. Most recently, estimating the effort and impact of each future need and mapping those to what will both get us to the future we need to head toward and also satisfy current needs. We'll get into the details of these in just a few minutes. So that's how we did the prioritization this time. But this isn't the ideal, more kind of long-term thinking we'd like to do. We're moving from a continuous MVP model to kind of considering our broader mission and vision and making sure our direction aligns with those. More to come on that too. Slide 69. But this demonstrates kind of live and in front of you how we as a team are maturing too. We're on the same path y'all are on, moving from short-term, what needs to be done kind of reaction to envisioning and accomplishing long-term goals. So we'll be taking this step back to look at our principles. In this case, the design system's vision, mission, possibly our pole star. That will help us get to a more kind of cohesive and aligned plan, and ultimately to better serve all of you. Slide 7. And for better or worse, our process is part of our product, which is why we're being so transparent today. You may be in a similar position, working to mature and scale your efforts. We hope being clear about how this is working for us, how we're managing to work responsibly with limited resources, might help others understand how they might approach something similar. Slide 71. So how and why are we introducing more process to the design system? Well, primarily to keep new things moving into the system as appropriate. Slide 72, which gets us to the roadmap. We're here. Slide 73. Here is what we're planning. Some of these are shorter term, some are longer term, as we look toward the end of this year and into next year. So our top items here right now are to conduct a content audit of our website, define our component acceptance framework and lifecycle, establish our own ongoing accessibility-focused usability testing, publish updated guidance for using disabled styles, create critical checklists for components, develop USWDS web components, and convert design tokens to JSON and CSS variables. Some of these are interdependent on each other, so we'll get to more detail on each of these next here. Slide 74. First, conducting a content audit of our website. This means that slide 75. This means cataloging and understanding our site's current organization, information architecture, pathways, and the content itself. Basically, all the information we provide there. And why are we doing this? We need to gain kind of a holistic understanding of our current site and fix where there might be redundancies and information that could be out of date or obsolete. This is also in the interest of reducing clutter and getting better organized. The milestones we've set out include first, identifying key metrics and collecting data on our current state. Next, we're doing a page level audit, reviewing every page's content types, style, priority. After that, we'll create an action list, consolidate, and prepare for what we need to do on a continuous basis. We expect this to take 6 months, and the good news here is that we've already gotten started and probably have about 2 months left here. 76. Our next roadmap item is to define our component acceptance framework and lifecycle. In more detail, 77. This item shows you, our community, as well as the public, the process of how our components move from being a proposal that you or someone else makes, all the way to being published as part of the design system, as well as what happens after that, like ongoing testing, and also what happens when a component needs major changes. So why this item? We want to make it clear to everyone what every design system component has to have to be included. This also brings consistency and transparency to our decision-making and builds a common understanding and a predictable process to how components develop and change. These items are part of what's typically called governance, which is, a funny term here maybe, but it's really important for process consistency and continuity. We've started on this one too, and as a preview, we anticipate in the proposal process, we'll be asking for things like a summary of your proposed components, like why it would benefit end users and the system itself, details about its functionality and implementation, accessibility considerations, any documentation or evidence you might have, potential drawbacks or alternatives you considered, things like that. So getting this in place has been holding up some current proposals. So we want to note that it's taken certainly longer than we'd like to get back to people there. We apologize for that, but we're happy to share that they are still moving now that we've got this started. The milestones here are first defining the proposal process, as well as documenting the complete component lifecycle from that proposal phase all the way to maybe being retired in the future. Next, we'll share that information and then ask for feedback from you, along with trying out this process with a prototype. After that, we'll publish both the proposal process and the lifecycle publicly. 78. Our next item is establishing ongoing accessibility-focused usability testing of our components. 79. This one operationalizes our usability testing with people who use assistive technology and those with disabilities as a sustainable, repeatable process that we do in an ongoing way, and which could serve as a model that other teams could adopt. Our reasoning here should hopefully be pretty evident due to how it aligns with our design principles, which Dan mentioned earlier. This supports at least two of them very directly, arguably more, helping us better understand how our components work for real people, including those with disabilities, and help us be more proactive in finding and fixing any usability issues. We'd also like to be able to share this, again, so other teams can use it. So the milestones first off here is creating our process for recruiting, managing information, compensating participants, and for doing the testing itself. Nextly, we'll try this process out. In the process, developing relationships to make this more sustainable. After that is putting this plan into place. So performing that ongoing testing and sharing how we do it. Again here, we've gotten a good start with about 2 months left on this one. 80. This next item is publishing updated guidance around using disabled styles. 81, which, as a spoiler, after some research, will include us discouraging using disabled styles in most cases, and also helps us create another new process that we should point out too. This process focuses on documenting and publishing our research. The research in question here happens to be what we did to support our decisions in this guidance, but how we did this could apply to other research we do. The why here, again, supporting our design principles. Well, this improves the usability and the accessibility of our forms and establishes a repeatable process for publishing our guidance, along with the research and reasoning we used to get to those decisions. We're about halfway through these milestones. We've completed the research on this, and we're in the midst of figuring out the scope of this updated guidance to publish on our site. Lastly, we'll work on the repeatable process for publishing research generally. We have about 3 months left here. For the rest of the items, I'll pass back over to Dan.
Great. Thanks, Dan. This is Dan again. Here we are on slide 82. So our next roadmap item is one we've talked about quite a bit here on these calls and shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who's been with us from month to month. And that's creating critical checklists for components. Let's dig into this one. Slide 83. So when we're creating critical checklists for components, we mean that we intend to publish plain language checklists for validating or revalidating the accessibility of our components with lightweight manual testing. These checklists will be component-based, easy to read, that capture accessibility checks related to our components and the current status of those checks for our components. So why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this to provide an accessibility baseline for our own components that teams can use to validate our work and their own. We're doing this really to kind of democratize accessibility through clarity in plain language, to democratize this accessibility checking across teams and skill sets. We're doing this to improve the accessibility of sites and services. So here's some milestones for how we'll get there. First, as we've kind of talked about a little bit on these calls, we're going to establish content types and voice and tone as we think about collecting these checklist items, these accessibility critical checklist items, voice and tone, and the way we're structuring things. Next, we'll document heuristics for each of our components and prototype this content format with our community. After that, we'll publish checklists to our website alongside a mechanism for updating them. And all in all, we expect this to take about 6 months to finish. So sort of end of year. Slide 84. The next one, at least for me, is the biggie. This is kind of one we've been thinking about and prepping for quite some time. One that I believe is a key milestone in the development of the design system, and that's developing USWDS web components. Slide 85. I'm not going to go fully into like all the sort of details of web components here, but what does it mean to develop USWDS web components? Well, what we want to do is to move away from delivering plain HTML as our components, leaving it up to teams to implement these components in their own template systems. We want to deliver templated, platform-agnostic, web standards-based components with a simple, consistent, documented API. So why are we doing this? We're doing this to simplify integrations and provide out-of-the-box components. We're doing this to reduce the time and cost it takes to update the design system to minor and patch versions. And we want to establish a documented API for our components that teams can use with confidence. They can rely on our components from release to release and make the general process of staying up to date with the design system more straightforward, more easy to predict. So here are some milestones for how we'll get there. First, we're starting to evaluate frameworks and we're collecting examples from other design systems. Next, we'll be moving toward an alpha release of our core components, banner and identifier, as well as identifying partners for a beta program. After that, we'll be conducting a thorough beta program for development, feedback, and testing. We'll also be thoroughly documenting these components and their API on our website. Together, all of this is very likely in support of a new major version of the design system that would be sometime next year. Because when, in all, we expect that this process will take about a year. It's a big thing and something that we want to do deliberatively and properly. Slide 86. And finally, and maybe this feels like not a showstopper to end on, but it's still pretty cool. We want to be converting design tokens to JSON and into CSS variables or custom properties. Slide 87. What does it mean to convert design tokens to JSON and CSS variables? That sounds boring. Well, not exactly. It means that we want to create a portable canonical data format for USWDS design tokens based on standard schemas. What does that mean? Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this to allow more teams to be able to use our design tokens across frameworks and platforms. We're doing this to reduce our dependency on specialized formats like SCSS or SAS. We're doing this to deliver design tokens in a modern, familiar format that teams expect. And also, we're doing it in support of our big initiative of USWDS web components. We see all of these things as working together in developing a common data structure for tokens and connecting tokens to CSS custom properties and connecting CSS custom properties into our web components. So here's some milestones for how we'll get there. First, we're going to be auditing token data, researching JSON structures, and determining a conversion strategy. We've already talked with some of your teams about tokens and JSON, and we'll continue to do so. Next, we'll convert our system tokens, define the JSON transformations to SAS variables, and create our token library. Afterwards, we'll convert the remaining tokens, define the JSON transformations to CSS variables, and integrate those into our web components and likely our traditional CSS as well. In all, we expect this process to take about 8 months or so, happening in parallel with the development of web components. And that is our product roadmap. So Anne, back to you.
Thanks, Dan. This is Anne again. This slide includes a screenshot of how you can look at our roadmap directly, along with how far we've gotten. So this presents a list of the roadmap items by name, their timeline, their status, and links to the GitHub issues that are related to each one. You can check it out yourself at https://github.com/orgs/USWDS/projects/13/views/1. Sorry, that's a long one. Slide 88 or 89. So does what we shared just now in terms of like features of our roadmap set us up for success? Arguably, it sets us up for the next year-ish, but we do intend to take a step back to figure out how we continue to do this better. I mentioned that this roadmap isn't ideal nor done the way we might want. Product managers looking at this version may look at it with some skepticism or twitch a little involuntarily. Roadmaps, by and large, should not be just a list of features to build. We need to get to a more strategic mindset version, one that brings our mission and vision into focus and makes clear how we'll move forward to accomplishing them. We're also learning how an agile roadmap may work for us. So we should note that what we're sharing today might change as we learn more. We'll work to validate what we did in the roadmap you see today, or learn that we need to shift one of these goals. We're also learning how we might improve as we go. Think more strategically and react as we learn new things or as essential parts of our landscape change. 90. To help provide some grounding, I should note that the typical cadence of change in systems like ours, a mission changes the least often. Your mission is your purpose. It's what you intend to accomplish and why that's important. In terms of frequency of change, the next would be mission followed by a vision, which could adjust a little as you learn more. Your vision describes broadly what's in the future and how you hope to get there from the point of view of the person who needs it. Most are aspirational, but not unrealistic. What does the design system solve? For who? How does this help? And what's the outcome? After vision, the next thing that may change a little more frequently may be your pole star. Some say North Star. That's how you do what you do to reach your vision. This is what you measure your actions against, your guiding mechanism for decision making. It describes how the team should do the thing, motivating us all and showing how we contribute to the mission and vision. A pole star can help you figure out if you're about to prioritize something that doesn't contribute to the core point of the organization. And what changes more frequently is your roadmap, which you'll update as you accomplish goals that move you towards accomplishing your mission and vision. Then much more frequently, maybe your API, right? but you can depend on the underlying principles, your mission especially. This prevents everything from changing kind of all at once. 91. So in the interest of supporting the universe of government digital products and sites, our goal here is to introduce some structure and refocus on our mission and vision to create a solid foundation and plan for the system itself, farther into the future, ultimately to serve your systems and products and sites, and thus your users. So this is how we go from kind of the wild cosmos universe, all kind of randomly placed stars and cosmic dust, so flexible as to maybe not feel as supportive as it could, to a more consistent system that functionally supports your efforts in a continuous way, a foundation, or a roof, or a net. Here we're using a geodesic dome at the bottom of the slide to show how all the dots connect here. For what's next to create this structure, I'll pass back to Dan.
Thank you, Anne. This is Dan again. And I'm not going to speak a lot about what this is, but essentially I'm going to say that we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about this like sort of continuously moving forward starting next month. Next, we're going to be stepping back to mission and vision. Just as Anna said, we're going to be taking a look at the current USWDS mission and vision. It's there on our website on the About page. It is a great mission and vision. And we want to talk more about what we deliver for teams and discuss how we collaborate together and move forward to create and support a common vision. So we want to be looking at this mission and vision. We want to be trying to use the idea of talking about our mission and vision and talking about it with you to begin to create this collaborative common vision that we can use as the design system to plan effectively and to make changes in a smart, continuous mission and vision supportive way. So that's what we're going to begin to talk about next month.